your daily fix of women's mixed martial arts from the UFC, Invicta FC, Bellator, and one championship. Be in the loop, cause Golden State Media Concepts got you covered. Get your fix on women's MMA. We've got you covered on Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Women's MMA Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Arnel De Leon, and hopefully you're doing well for yourself. You, your friends, your family, you're all healthy, whether you live in the States or internationally. I hope that you're doing perfectly fine for yourself during this time of uncertainty. So, an organization has been going through a major time of uncertainty here is the UFC. The UFC, there are events, there are cards, there are fights, we got fighters being pulled out here. No one knows what to expect from the UFC in the span of just 1 week. We got one fighter who was supposed to defend his belts, that's Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Tony Ferguson. That fight was supposed to happen, but instead we got Justin Gaethje versus Tony Ferguson, and that event got scrapped. We got one fight getting scrapped, we got another fight getting scrapped, we got new fights pulling in, and now officially, this is coming in from Brett Okamoto from ESPN MMA here, that we got a UFC event happening in May 9th, and two of those fights involve Amanda Nunes versus Felicia Spencer for the featherweight women's belt, and then we got Carla Esparza versus Michelle Waterson with bantamweight title implications being involved here. So, how the heck did this happen? So in order for us to talk about a UFC, we kind of talk about the WWE here. And although there is this divide between WWE pro wrestling fans and mixed martial arts fans, trust me, as a person who follows both sports have a very weird view or perspective on each other here. In the fact that if you don't remember Ronda Rousey. So when Ronda Rousey first came to the WWE, Ronda Rousey's character was that she is the most feared striker of all of WWE. And when you have pro wrestling reviewers or pro wrestling podcasters being like, wow, this is Ronda Rousey coming to the UFC, she is legit, her striking is legit, her ability to wrestle is legit actually. Ronda Rousey truly is the baddest woman in the entire planet. But then, if you look at Ronda Rousey's, fake striking game within the WWE, it's not all that impressive. Actually, it's very sloppy, very cartoony, and if you know if you've seen Ronda Rousey fights, you would know that the worst part about Ronda Rousey's game is her striking ability. Yes, Ronda Rousey, for a short period of time, was a good striker, sort of. Okay, she was a really good, within the clinch, dirty boxer striker. Her ability to fight out and inside the pockets kind of varies depending on how you look at it. She's not all that strong when she's to fight or when she's to poke her opponent when fighting outside the pocket, but when she gets inside the pocket and starts going for a clinching, and then tries to break off and goes for a hook or for a short uppercut, she has punching power. She definitely does. But the way that's translated into pro wrestling is very confusing and very weird. And the reason I'm talking about WWE here is because Dana White and Vince McMahon have joined Donald Trump's economy task force team. It's a team comprised of professional leaders within the tech industry, entertainment industry, and also the sports industry. And so Donald Trump, Dana White, and Vince McMahon are all working together here. And the strange thing, though, is that while UFC has been having their events being canceled, they had UFC London canceled, UFC on ESPN canceled, UFC 249 canceled. While those events are all being canceled, you got the WWE here that are consistently and continually doing their shows in a weekly basis. They have NXT, 205 Live, Monday Night Raw, and SmackDown. They are doing 4 shows a week. So while the WWE are able to do 4 shows in their closed facility a week, the UFC are struggling doing the same thing. Not only that, they're also having their events canceled and they're having their fighters pull out. So there's a joke here from a pro wrestling podcast here in that how is it that Vince McMahon was able to make his pro wrestling show considered an essential business, but Dana White was not able to go get his show to be considered an essential business for a sporting event, considering that WWE is pretty much theater in a nutshell. It's theater with sporting athleticism and some aspects of sports being involved here. But in the grand scheme of things, WWE, it's not a real sporting event. It's not. And so how can this fake sporting event be considered essential while UFC is not? And so it's because, well, Florida. To those of you who don't know, Dana White and the governor of Florida play the role as donors and financiers for Linda McMahon's run when she applied for senator. Now, currently, Linda McMahon, who is the wife of Vince McMahon, is currently working as a White House representative in Washington. And it's because of that power that the WWE has in having Linda McMahon there, and that the governor of Florida was able to go say, hey, the WWE is an essential product because it's very viable to the economy of Florida. When the truth is that Linda McMahon and the WWE are funding and giving a lot of advertising money to the state of Florida, which in turn means that they are an integral part to Florida's government when it comes to income. It seems kind of shady. No, it's not. It seems it is really shady that the WWE pretty much are pretty much paying their way to get themselves to legally broadcast and have live shows in their events, as long as not open to the general public, in that they're pre-taping everything or they're filming within like a closed room or a closed building. They can get away with that. And now there's speculation that UFC was going to do the same thing and have events happen in Florida. Instead, they're going to do the same thing that WWE is doing in Florida, in the fact that they're having a sporting event, a kind of sporting event, happen in a closed building in their Apex facility in Las Vegas. So Dana White is predicting that by May 9th, they are going to have a UFC card that's going to happen there. And in that card, we got Ferguson versus Justin Gaethje, Rosenstrike versus Alistair Overeem, Dominic Cruz versus Henry Cejudo, Felicia Spencer versus Amanda Nunes, Carla Esparza versus Michelle Waterson. We have all those fights that are going to happen by May 9th because Dana White predicts that by May 9th, the whole issue of the COVID-19 thing would be less strict, and that there'll be less rules, there'll be less restrictions that apply there, because the applied logic of essential business that's happening in Florida doesn't apply all that well to Las Vegas. The California thing was an example. Dana White tried pushing for an event in California, but the California government says, "Nah, you can't really do that here." So you can't get away with some stuff in some certain states here. Dana White is buying in for, hey, things are going to be a lot less strict in the Las Vegas, Nevada area. We have our own private building, and hopefully by May 9th, Las Vegas, the Arizona area, the Nevada area is gonna share the same principles of what's considered an essential business, just like Florida did. And so now we have, hopefully, the target date here is May 9th. UFC in the Apex facility. It's gonna be so I got the entire card for you right here. And that we have Tony Ferguson versus Justin Gaethje, Henry Cejudo versus Dominic Cruz, Amanda Nunes versus Felicia Spencer, Francis Ngannou versus Rosenstrike, Jeremy Stevens versus Calvin Kattar, Donald Cerrone versus Anthony Pettis, Greg Hardy versus Jorgen De Castro, Alexei Oleinik versus Fabricio Verdum, Carla Esparza versus Michelle Waterson, Ronaldo Jacare Souza versus Uriah Hall, Vicente Luque versus Nico Price, and then finally Charles Rosa versus Bryce Mitchell. The prediction is we're going to have all these fights that are going to happen by May 9. This is a target card for the event, for the Apex facility. We still have no clue of what's going to happen with the Fight Island, because Dana White says all future events are going to happen in this Apex facility. And last time we heard about Dana White says that Dana White said recently that they are actively currently building a facility in the island, that they got the island locked down, that they know what to do with it. They already have people over there already financing and building stuff in the island. But then he doesn't mention about the island when talking about the Apex facility. So, is the island still going to be a thing? Because we have international fighters here. We have international versus American fighters happening in this card. So will Fight Island be scrapped? Will Fight Island still be a thing? Or will there just be two locations to which UFC events can happen? It's very confusing on where this card is going to end up. It's very confusing on how UFC is going to organize their events coming up in the next month now. But we got a targeted card full of really fun fights, really enjoyable fights here with very heavy implications in the title scene here. Carla Esparza versus Michelle Waterson, that has heavy implications there. If either Carla Esparza has been trying to buy in herself back in the top 5 of the strawweight women's divisions. And if she can go defeat Michelle Waterson, then Esparza can go fight somebody within the top 5, and then she can go and make a case for fighting for the title. Michelle Waterson, after having a very impressive showing against Joanna Jędrzejczyk, will also try to go back to the top 5 here after fighting against Carla Esparza. And also, let's not forget about the title fight between Felicia Spencer and Amanda Nunes. So, you're listening to the GSMC Women's MMA Podcast, coming back right after the break here with some more MMA news and an analysis of these two fights, coming up after the short break.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA, from the UFC to extreme cage fighting. They got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
So it is official here, sort of, in that we got here Amanda Nunes versus Felicia Spencer fighting for the featherweight women's title. The betting odds here obviously are in favor of Amanda Nunes versus Felicia Spencer, but Felicia Spencer, in my opinion, really was the right choice to fight against Nunes, because if you look at the rankings here for the women's featherweight division, I'll be blatantly honest with you, the women's featherweight division, when compared to the bantamweight women's division, isn't all that impressive at all. I think last week I talked about, or 2 weeks ago, I talked about how deep of a division the featherweight women's division is, and very few fighters within the division cracked the top 30 of the top fighters. No, I said top 25. The top 25 of the top pound for pound women's fighters in all of the UFC. I think none of them made it to the top 25, with the exception of Amanda Nunes, who is a special case, considering the fact that she doesn't just fight for one division; she fights for two two divisions. She's not exclusively fighting for the featherweight division. And if you're to look at the featherweight women's division, Felicia Spencer, without a doubt, is the best fighter left in the division. And when you look at her recent performances against Chris Cyborg, Megan Anderson, and Pam Sorensen here, it makes sense that Felicia Spencer would be the next person to fight against Nunes. Now, when analyzing these two fighters, we have to analyze their most difficult fights here. So, Felicia Spencer here is fighting against Amanda Nunes, coming into the fight with an 8-1 record, with an impressive victory over against Zara dos Santos and Megan Anderson and Pam Sorensen here. Felicia Spencer's one loss was against Chris Cyborg, and if you're to watch the Chris Cyborg versus the Felicia Spencer fights, that was the fight that made me say, you know what, it's just not gonna happen. I just can't see Chris Cyborg fighting for the title anymore, because the performance that Felicia Spencer had against Chris Cyborg was incredibly impressive. Even though Felicia Spencer lost against Cyborg fought against Spencer a lot more technical. It was a lot more of a technical bout. It was more of a boxing exchange. It was more of a bout between two people trying to fight and poke each other from outside the pocket, going inside the end, then fighting right back out again, trying to poke each other, trying to find the best. Neither fighter was taking any risks and were fighting very smart. Chris Cyborg still outstriked against Felicia Spencer here, but from the fight with Chris Cyborg, Spencer made a couple more adjustments. Then went from being a little bit more passive towards when she fought against Zara dos Santos. And this is why I think Felicia Spencer has a case against Amanda Nunes. Because the issue with Amanda Nunes from her fight with Germaine de Randamie is the fact that Amanda Nunes has a tendency of going all out, going full on blitzkrieg, trying to aim for the knockout. When she goes into every fight, the first round of every Amanda Nunes fights doesn't involve her trying to slowly ease into her opponent. She just goes, dives in, she goes in for the knockout punch. She tries to go for in close clinching battle. She goes for dirty boxing. She tries to close the gap as much as she can when she fights against her opponents. When she fought against Germaine de Randamie, fought against Chris Cyborg, Amanda Nunes is perfectly fine going for the 50-50 exchanges, where she's gonna walk out. Amanda Nunes doesn't fight all that intelligent within the first round. She fights with all heart going in, putting herself in a very dangerous situation in order to pull out the victory. And so far, that's been going really well for her. But when you look at Felicia Spencer and look at how Felicia Spencer adjusts herself against the fight that she's fighting against, When she fought against Chris Cyborg, she fought very passive, fought very safe, and if you could defensively fight properly against Amanda Nunes, and you get towards like the end of the second round, where you get to see a couple of small cracks into Amanda Nunes' game, you can tell, like, you know what? If you could slow down a fight, if you can be the one if you can properly counterfight, if you can survive the onslaught that Amanda Nunes gives you throughout the first round and sort of the first half of the second round, there are moments to which Nunes slows down a wee bit, and then the other fighter can go take advantage. When I saw Nunes try to overwhelm against Germaine de Randamie, and Germaine did a really good job trying to counterfight and try to slow the pace down against Nunes. Nunes had to resort to wrestling very slow, also fighting very slow, resorting to clinching, resorting to takedowns, because if Amanda Nunes isn't confident in her striking game within the first 2 rounds, she then resorts into trying to fight very up close through dirty boxing, clinching, and trying to go for takedowns. This really annoyed Germaine de Randamie, and although there's a lot of negative press that pushed towards Amanda Nunes in her fight against de Randamie, I say that if it wasn't a Felicia Spencer versus Nunes fight, it would have to be Germaine de Randamie versus Amanda Nunes too. I think if those two were to fight again, I think Randamie would come into that fight as a favorite, in my personal opinion. I wouldn't be surprised if Germaine de Randamie were to beat out against Amanda Nunes, either through the 4th round through a TKO or after 5 rounds through a decision. I can see it happening. Now, Felicia Spencer against Amanda Nunes, there are, so after Nunes' victory against Germaine de Randamie, I expect Nunes to go fight in her future fights, being a lot more safe, being a lot more passive. I think she's been humbled fighting against Germaine de Randamie in those first 3 rounds. I think Amanda Nunes got like, okay, you know what? I took a risk fighting against Randamie. It didn't turn out well for me in the early portions of the round, and I had to resort fighting against Germaine de Randamie very slow, very methodical. And Felicia Spencer has shown that she can go and keep up with fighters fighting in this style. She went 4 rounds against Pam Sorensen. She went 3 rounds against Chris Cyborg. If those were championship rounds, I could easily see Felicia Spencer go into the 5th round and continue to be consistent against Cyborg. And then when she fought against Dos Santos, she improved a lot more better, and she was a lot more aggressive, and she was able to pick out and find shots, find angles to which she can go find for the knockout punches. Felicia Spencer has gone a long way in her evolution as a fighter. And so when you say, oh, Felicia Spencer, she doesn't stand a chance against Amanda Nunes, even though Amanda Nunes is a favorite in this fight, do not count out Felicia Spencer, and don't be surprised if Felicia Spencer were to take advantage of either Amanda Nunes' like recklessness in the first round, or Felicia Spencer does a good job pacing herself and tries to fight a little bit slow and tries to adjust herself down through all 5 rounds. If Felicia Spencer works on her cardio ability and her endurance and her counterfighting, I can see Spencer pull out the biggest upsets ever in women's UFC history by defeating Amanda Nunes. Now, so in the last podcast, I was talking about Holly Holm. How you could see that there were dents in Ronda Rousey's game that Holly Holm was able to take advantage of. I remember in a podcast Eddie Bravo talked about how, and another analyst talked about how the coach for Ronda Rousey, the coach gave Ronda Rousey way too much confidence in her boxing ability and striking game, being like, "Hey, you're a great boxer, you're a great striker, man. Keep pushing forward." And yes, although Amanda Nunes is a lot more better striker than Ronda Rousey is, I'm afraid that after a fight against Germaine de Randamie, Amanda Nunes will fight a lot more safe, a lot more passive. She'll fight a lot more smart, especially since Zara dos Santos is her last victory. Felicia Spencer's last victory, which is against Zara dos Santos, ended via TKO punches and elbows in just 1 minute and 23 seconds into the first round. So I'm like, wow. So Spencer has knockout ability. She has knockout ability. She has good defensive wrestling, and she can go and if she knows how to fight in the pocket and survive, and like, she pretty much has to rope it up against Amanda Nunes essentially to win this fight. If Felicia Spencer can keep up the pace and be consistent and be able to survive the onslaught that is of Amanda Nunes, then Spencer might win out in the end. My comparison to this fight would be Francis Ngannou versus Stipe Miocic. If you guys remember, so Ngannou was throwing out these like whiffed punches that were insane. You know, like if Ngannou catches you with a right hook or left uppercut, you are done. You are knocked out. You can't survive from that. But if you were to survive from that first round, you know, Ngannou kind of slows down a wee bit. He tries to aim. He tries to go for being a boxer. He goes for the desperate right hooks though. But all of a sudden he goes from striking ferociously, striking hard, and going all in to fighting very safe, trying to fight outside the pockets. And I think if Felicia Spencer can catch Amanda Nunes within the third round and dives in after Nunes is a little bit spent and goes in for inside the pocket fighting, then Spencer could win this. So, but you know that's me wishing that Spencer wins the fights. I genuinely believe that Amanda Nunes has all the skills and ability to defeat Spencer. Strategy will be the key aspect into how this fight is going to play out. In terms of physical tools, Amanda Nunes without a doubt. So coming up right after the break here, we'll be talking about Carla Esparza versus Michelle Waterson. How will that fight play out? Right here at the GSMC Women's MMA Podcast.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And welcome back. So, we've been discussing Amanda Nunes versus Felicia Spencer here for the featherweight women's title. Who do I think is going to win this? I predict here Amanda Nunes defeating Felicia Spencer either through a first round KO or via decision. In the fact that Amanda Nunes overwhelms Felicia Spencer throughout the first 2 rounds of the fight, then Nunes begins to fight a little bit more smarter, and then when it gets to the third and fourth round, Amanda Nunes will try to start grappling with Felicia Spencer, and then by the 5th round, both fighters begin to start slowing down here, and then Nunes will win via unanimous decision. That's my predictions. Nunes wins either first round or wins via unanimous decision. Felicia Spencer, the way how I see her defeating against Nunes would be through a sudden TKO coming in the 3rd round. In the fact that Amanda Nunes gasses herself out within the first 2 rounds and part of the beginning of the 3rd round. If Nunes gasses out by the 3rd round, Felicia Spencer can go take advantage of the situation and while Amanda Nunes tries to close in the distance here through a grappling exchange, through clinching, because Amanda Nunes has a tendency, her tell of when she's really tired is very obvious, in that if Nunes isn't trying to go and get in and out of the pocket, trying to go for a boxing match within the first 2 rounds, if Amanda Nunes is really tired and really gassed out, she tries to go for a clinching game or tries to go for dirty boxing. If Felicia Spencer can catch Amanda Nunes off guard there, because Nunes, her arms are a little bit down when she tries to go for a clinch. When her arms are a bit down, there's a brief instance to which Spencer can go dive in there, go for a quick uppercut or a hook or an elbow to the face of Nunes as she tries to go for a clinching exchange. I think that's the best time for Spencer to go in. Within the 3rd round, when Nunes kind of drops her arms just a wee bit, trying to go for grappling instead of just boxing. So, best case scenario for Felicia Spencer, 3rd round TKO. I predict Nunes winning either first round KO or by the 5th round through decision. But another fight here that I believe will be even more exciting than that fight will be Carla Esparza versus Michelle Waterson. This fight has heavy strawweight title implications in the fact that both fighters are trying to aim for that top 5 of the rankings. So if Carla Esparza were to defeat against Michelle Waterson, she would then fight somebody within the top 5, because they're both of them are currently outside of the top 5, but they've both been trying to buy their way in. Carla Esparza is currently number 8 in the strawweight women's rankings, while Michelle Waterson is number 9. They've both been within the outside of the top 5 rankings for about a while now, and so one win from either of these 2 fighters can get them within the top 5 potentially. And so when you look at Michelle Waterson versus Carla Esparza here, Carla Esparza's most recent victories were against Alexa Grasso and Vilma Janreva, but she lost recently against Tatiana Suarez and Claudia Cadella. When discussing Michelle Waterson, we have to talk about her performance against Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Joanna Jędrzejczyk, one of the best fighters of all time, and not just the women's divisions, but in all of UFC. The most dominant strawweight champion of all time. When we look at Joanna Jędrzejczyk and how she fights, Michelle Waterson fought perfectly how Joanna Jędrzejczyk wanted to fight that fight. And so, Joanna Jędrzejczyk is really good at fighting outside the pocket with her boxing ability. And so Joanna Jędrzejczyk, for the most part, always has advantages when it comes to reach and being able to fight inside the pocket and being able to duck out there, trying to evade all the damage you can. Michelle Waterson was fighting outside the pocket, trying to poke Joanna Jędrzejczyk in the boxing exchanges. That didn't turn out well for her. Michelle Waterson was going for these high kicks. She's trying to go for these straight body kicks. That really didn't do anything at all against Joanna Jędrzejczyk because Joanna is really good at evading strikes. And for the most part, there's a reason why a lot of people don't try to kick against Joanna Jędrzejczyk because there's no point in exerting energy into trying to go for a shot or trying to go for a kick unless you have high cardio, like how Willie Zhang does. Because for the most part, you're either whiffing those kicks, or she's gonna block it, or she's gonna parry it, or she's gonna go check it. For the most part, you don't want to fight Joanna's game that involves outside the pocket boxing. Carla Esparza, though, Michelle Waterson was still having a lot more easier time trying to find her range in the fight, while Carla Esparza has found a lot more confidence in her stand-up for the past 2 years. When I compare the strengths and weaknesses of both fighters, I have to give the edge to Michelle Waterson. Carla Esparza doesn't seem to be all that confident fighting outside the pocket, and although Michelle Waterson was very uncomfortable fighting against Joanna Jędrzejczyk outside the pocket, though, when you compare the striking game of Carla Esparza versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk, without a doubt, Joanna Jędrzejczyk is the superior striker versus Carla Esparza. So Michelle Waterson can get away trying to fight with Carla Esparza with some tactics that she was trying to implement to use in the Joanna fights. And also, when Carla Esparza tries to go inside, tries to fight from outside, tries to dive in for a takedown or for a clinching game, Carla Esparza, to me, has a very predictable game in that there's no reason she would try to go in for the clinch game unless she's trying to go for dirty boxing uppercuts, which she's been trying to do lately a lot recently. And whenever she's trying to go for a clinch game or tries to go inside the pocket or tries to go for some dirty boxing, she's always trying to aim for a right uppercut, and her left arm kind of goes a wee bit down because she's trying to go for a takedown in case the uppercut kind of whiffs. And I feel like Michelle Waterson's clinch game and ground game through her jiu-jitsu is good enough for her to handle anything Carla Esparza gives to Michelle Waterson in the clinch game. So if Carla Esparza tries to go for a takedown, her left arm is a wee bit down while her right arm is left available. I think Michelle Waterson can go grab Esparza's right hand and then tries to bring Esparza to her guard, and then from then on, Michelle Waterson can go transition into an arm triangle or can go and out-wrestle her into getting a rear naked choke position. I feel like Michelle Waterson has all the skills and all the tools to be able to handle herself and defend herself from anything Carla Esparza can give. So Michelle Waterson, who has a very dangerous ground game, if Esparza were to take down Michelle Waterson, that's not the best position for Esparza to be in, really. It's a battle between, well, what's better? Carla Esparza's wrestling, which is elite, versus Michelle Waterson's jiu-jitsu game, which is also very elite. So, depending on how the stand-up goes, there could be Carla Esparza overwhelming Michelle Waterson and then closing in the distance early on in the first round, which I don't see really happening. Carla Esparza has been trying to do so for that, but she hasn't. Her stand-up game and her ability to close into the distance, though, has improved, but has not improved enough that I can't see Michelle Waterson defending herself and placing herself in the best position to do a submission hold onto Carla Esparza. So when I look at Carla Esparza versus Michelle Waterson, then I am more confident in Michelle Waterson's striking game, and her ability to defend the takedown, and her ability to handle the clinch, and her ability to get out of any position from her guard. I have more confidence points on Michelle Waterson's ability to do all that versus Carla Esparza. Now, who's a stronger fighter? Who can pose their will more? I would say Carla Esparza, definitely. The way how I predict the fight going would be unlike last time where it was Michelle Waterson trying to dictate the pace against Joanna Jędrzejczyk and then inadvertently fighting her style. I could see here Carla Esparza trying to be a little bit more aggressive, trying to close in the distance while Michelle Waterson is trying to pick apart Carla Esparza. I think Waterson has more reach overall. I think she's going to go for those body kicks. She's going for those leg kicks. She's going to go for those kicks that Michelle Waterson wasn't able to do against Joanna. And then she's going to grind out Carla Esparza through 3 rounds. and then Michelle Waterson is going to win the fight through a unanimous decision. That's my pick. Now, there is the possibility of Carla Esparza, ding, 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 the fight starts, and then Michelle Waterson is trying to keep a distance between her and Carla Esparza, because there's absolutely no way that Carla Esparza can outstrike or can outlast Michelle Waterson through 3 rounds of boxing. I just can't really see it happening. Michelle Waterson has a very underrated boxing game. And for Carla Esparza, though, I say she's going to dive in there, tries to go for a clinch, and then Michelle Waterson brings her down to her guard. And so even though Esparza is on top of Waterson, I think Waterson's defense will be good enough, and she'll be able to pull off some strikes, and she's going to wear down Esparza through her takedown defense. And then as the fight goes on, Esparza loses out in the cardio. Michelle Waterson has insane cardio, in that she can keep up and be consistent. Even when Michelle Waterson was losing against Ioana Jędrzejczyk, she was able to be kind of consistent in her pace when fighting against Ioana. And so when I see Esparza versus Michelle Waterson, I gotta give favor towards Michelle Waterson in the cardio aspect of things. So for the 2 women's fights, I predict here that it's gonna be Amanda Nunes defeating Felicia Spencer, and then I defeat Michelle Waterson defeating Carla Esparza. And then from then on, Michelle Waterson can go fight somebody, probably Tatia Soares or Claudia Cadella. Then depending on how those fights go off well, if Michelle Waterson were to beat those 2 fighters, she'd then move on towards Jessica Andrade. And I got to favor then Jessica Andrade in that scenario. But that's how I'm seeing Michelle Waterson's career play out if she were to win against Carla Esparza. And the same thing would happen vice versa if Carla Esparza were to defeat against Michelle Waterson. But this is the fight game, and anything can happen in the UFC. So coming up right after the break here, I'll be providing you with some more women's MMA news right here at the GSMC MMA podcast. Coming back right after the short break.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
And welcome back. So this is coming in from thesportsdaily.com, top 10 earning women's MMA fighters. So they look at the top 10 over here, and I got some interesting numbers for you guys. So after every fight, they always pull out, it's always shown on an MMA site or is reported in on what the salary is for the fighters right after the fight, including the win bonuses. Even Dana White expresses and says what these fighters are getting, like a fight of the night bonus or a submission of the night bonus or knockout of the night. They're always upfront with how much money they pay. There's a YouTube series out there that involved one fighter that was detailing how much money he was making. One fighter back in the mid-2010s, he fought on the undercard, was making roughly around $18,000 per year as a fighter. So yeah, so being an MMA fighter, even if you're on the UFC, isn't all that well. I got a lot of friends and family members who make a lot more money than these fighters, which perplexes me, honestly, because there's $1 billion going into the UFC, but yet a lot of these fighters barely crack $1 million. And when you look at the top 10 earning women's fighters out there, considering how huge of a fight Weili Zhang versus Ioana Jędrzejczyk was, and also considering how much of a huge star Ronda Rousey was during the mid-2010s, you can expect these fighters to be paid a lot more. And also maybe because of the fact that there's no official union for mixed martial artists, there are multiple unions. And because there's multiple unions and it's not completely standardized, there are different fighters getting varying different checks and salaries. I know Todd Duffy is one fighter who retired from the UFC and then came back because the salary just overall wasn't really worth it in the end. Not only that, so I'm gonna start naming off how much money these fighters make. But you also have to think about, like taxes. You gotta think about how much money that's being invested into food, grocery, into being invested into fight camp. There are fighters who pay thousands of dollars per month on the fight camp, and then their fight gets canceled. I'm pretty sure even though Khabib Nurmagomedov has made a lot of money in his run as the lightweight champion for the UFC, he's paid thousands of dollars for his fight camp and for travel fees and for food and to pay off for his his team. There's a lot of money being invested into these fights. These fights really do matter. So when a fight does get canceled, while some fighters are like, you know what, it's fine. It's fine. I don't really need the money. I want to challenge this guy. Money is in the short end of things when it comes to fighters who are barely cracking the 6 figs or just cracking the 7 figs here. So top 10 earning women's fighters. Number 1 is Amanda Nunes. In the past year, she totaled at $450K. So in her last fights, Amanda Nunes against Germaine Raname, she came in, she got $350,000 through just participating in the fights, and an extra $100,000 as her win bonus, totaling in at $450,000. We got Julia Budd from Bellator in. She did not get a win bonus this past year, but she did make $350,000 through participating in Bellator. Chris Cyborg is only making $250K. So, once again, my perspective on money here is different to a lot of people. Once again, I got friends and family members who make a lot more money than these top fighters. I got one of my friends right now works for Google. He just started in Google. He just started working for Google right now. I say he's like a year and a half in, and he makes well above $300K working for Google right now. As just starting. About a year and a half into his career, he's making over $300K at a lot younger age, a lot less in a lot less dangerous job than these fighters. So Chris Cyborg, she's one of the more bigger names in all of just mixed martial arts, only making $250K. Sadly, Valentina Shevchenko, her totaling purse is $230,000. Her show appearance was $115,000, and her win bonus gave her another $115,000. So great for her, man, being able to double down off one fight. Sweet. Joanna Jędrzejczyk, who in my opinion, I always say Joanna Jędrzejczyk is the greatest UFC Women's Champion of all time. I say she's ahead of Ronda Rousey in terms of how great her title reign is. And Amanda Nunes is right around the corner. It's either Amanda Nunes or Joanna Jędrzejczyk right now, who you say, who are the two best women's fighters of all time in the UFC. It's either Joanna or Amanda Nunes. And Joanna Jędrzejczyk is 4 spots below Amanda Nunes here. Joanna Jędrzejczyk, despite being the longest reigning strawweight champion in UFC history, she totaled in at $212,000, making a $106,000 a pay through her appearance at her recent fight against Weili Zhang, and then she also made another $106,000 in her win bonus, which was against Michelle Waterson. We look here at Rose Namajunas. Okay, so I guess this isn't based on last year then, but based on their last fight. So Rose Namajunas before her fight against Jessica Andrade was making $105,000 per appearance, and then was making $105,000 extra through winning the fights. Holly Holm this is strange. Holly Holm won $150,000 through just participating in an event, and then Holly Holm only got an extra $50,000 as a win bonus, which is very perplexing to me because it's shown here. Rose Namajunas gets double the pay. Shevchenko gets double the pay. Joanna also gets double the pay. Weili Zhang makes double the pay. Jessica Andrade, all these fighters get double pay if they were to go and win their fights. Holly Holm, though, only gets 33% of her pay as win bonus. So she totals in at $200,000. That's very strange to me. Jessica Andrade over here, she makes $200,000 totaling her purse. And then this is the report. So Jessica Andrade makes $100,000 per fight appearance. So she makes $50,000 less than Holly Holm. But she makes $50,000 extra in her win bonus. So despite the fact that Holly Holm is making $50,000 more in her appearance, her and Jessica Andrade pretty much have the same total purse. Weili Zhang also has the same total purse here. She comes in at She fought for $100,000, and her win bonus gave her another extra $100,000. And then Michelle Waterson, this is actually very surprising. So Michelle Waterson, who is ranked number 9 in the strawweight division, is part of the top 10 highest earning women's fighters. And the reason for that is because Michelle Waterson, if you look at her career, a lot of it involves are very spontaneous. Her fights being booked. It involves okay, so we got a fight card coming, we got a women's fighter available. All right, then she needs to fight somebody. Michelle Waterson, are you available? Yes. And so Michelle Waterson does a lot of, she and Daniel Cormier and Dominic Cruz, they do a lot of fight commentary and a lot of ESPN on Fox shows. They do some Fox MMA report shows. They do some reporting shows for ESPN. They also do they have their own businesses. And so Michelle Waterson being part of the top 10 isn't all that surprising to me. But the fact that she's top 10 in terms of earning and primarily just as a fighter in the UFC says that dang, Weili Zhang, she's almost making the same amount of money. I mean, Michelle Waterson's making almost the same amount of money as Weili Zhang, maybe arguably even more money than Weili Zhang, considering the fact that Michelle Waterson is doing all these extra media press stuff for the UFC. So, congratulations for Michelle Waterson there, man. Sweet. Making a lot of extra money there despite being number 9th ranked. She's grinding it, man. She really is. And so those are the top 10 women's MMA fighters here. What astounds me here a lot, though, is the fact that Ronda Rousey was making $1 million per show, including her win bonus. She's making well over $1 million. And so what astounds me is that arguably the two most dominant women's fighters right now in the UFC, in UFC's recent 5 years, would be Joanna Jędrzejczyk and Amanda Nunes, and both of them are barely scratching even half of what Ronda Rousey was making as her time as champion. So, man, it's kind of disheartening knowing that even that your performance in the UFC doesn't even equate all that well into how much money you make. It's all about how much of a draw you are that matters most in the UFC. That determines your overall pay for the company. But the thing is, though, Ronda Rousey was being booked hard by the UFC to become the next big star. Amanda Nunes and Joanna Jędrzejczyk, though, we all know that those two fighters are amazing. They're great fighters, but the UFC machine doesn't really push them all that often. They pushed Chris Cyborg a lot more than Amanda Nunes was, and there was even more advertising and more of a push for Rose Namajunas than there was for Joanna Jędrzejczyk, and even Paige VanZant is a star that's been pushed a lot more than Weili Zhang and Jessica Andrade. So what's going on here? Man. So hopefully next year these women MMA fighters can go make a lot more bang for their buck. That's what I'm hoping for. So you're listening to the GSMC Women's MMA Podcast, coming back with some more news.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
And welcome back here. So this is reporting in from BloodyElbow.com that Valentina Shevchenko wants to live on Fight Island. It's such a great idea. I love it. So Valentina Shevchenko, she was supposed to defend her belt at UFC 250, but sadly that's not going to happen due to an injury. But there's still a chance that it could happen, that Valentina Shevchenko could fight in Fight Island, though, maybe. Although details are scarce, UFC President Dana White is planning to use Fight Island as an alternative location for international UFC events during the coronavirus pandemic, with infrastructure likely completed by next month. All the infrastructure is being built right now and getting put in place. We get closer to that, then I'll start figuring out booking flights, getting guys ready. Plus, I can ship guys over there earlier, and they can start training over there in the island. Shevchenko, 32, is so excited by the news that the reigning UFC Women's Flyweight Champion is planning on training and perhaps even living on the private island when the infrastructure is up and running next month. It's such a great idea. From the first second I heard about it, I was like, I would definitely be there. Shevchenko told MMA Fighting's Peter Carroll in a recent interview. I want to fight on the island. I want to train there. I want to live there. I want to spend my time there, definitely. I love to do my training camps in places that are more suited for the climate, and if I have to fight on the island, why can I not train there, the champion pondered. It would probably be great to have a training camp there and then fight there, and then stay a bit extra time after you recover. How does that sound? For me, it sounds great. Shevchenko is currently recovering from a leg injury but planning to return to the octagon in August and look to have her comeback fight to take place in Fight Island. Yes, it could be, Shevchenko replied when asked if she thought her next fight could take place on the UFC's private island. If this is a possibility, I'll be more than glad to do the fight there. Definitely. This is what the doctors told me, the end of August, and I'll probably have to rush things a little bit to that to happen at the end of August. I think there's a real date for my return. It just have to work a lot. So Valentina Shevchenko is throwing her name out there for Fight Island. Fight Island is still complicated. It is still complicated on where Fight Island is. Shevchenko told me that one reason why she would like to... I think Valentina is imagining Fight Island to be this really great getaway, something out of the fictional Fire Festival that was being promoted initially when Fire Festival was first being promoted. I think she was imagining that, though. We have some people like me who's imagining Fight Island be like the movie Bloodsport. If you guys don't know Bloodsport, it's just like action movie with Jean-Claude Van Damme. He goes to this mysterious, scary island where they hold martial arts tournaments there. So Ali Shevchenko is being a little bit optimistic about this island. Instead of it being like a Bloodsport island, it's like a getaway, fun, relaxing island like Hawaii, where you can go there, train, have some fun, relax. So Ali, she's kind of optimistic about that at the very least, though. I expect her to fight against Joanne Calderwood. So initially the Shevchenko versus Joanne Calderwood was supposed to happen at UFC 251. That's probably not going to happen. Honestly, I cannot expect UFC numbered shows like UFC 249, 250, 251, because the May 9th UFC show, that's not even given a proper number. It's just saying that there's going to be an event at May 9th, and it's going to be a UFC event. So we're still unsure of what Joanne Calderwood and Valentina Shevchenko's positions will be in the UFC by end of August. We don't know where the UFC will be by August, so hopefully things will go out well for Valentina and Calderwood. So this is reporting in from MMAfighting.com that Ronda Rousey prefers how WWE pays athletes over UFC, details why both struggle to unionize. So when Ronda Rousey last competed in the UFC back in 2016, which was one of the sport's highest paid fighters, back then Rousey was neck and neck with Conor McGregor as one of the most profitable athletes on the UFC roster, and they were both compensated as such with base salary and pay-per-view bonuses. Rousey was a multi-millionaire. All the exact figures were not released, though. I estimate that she was making over $1 million per fight. If Conor McGregor was making essentially $1 million per fight, I think Conor McGregor was. After exiting the UFC following her last loss, Rousey transitioned herself into professional wrestling, where she linked a lucrative deal with WWE, World Wrestling Entertainment. That gives the ex-champ unique perspective on pay rates when it comes to... Okay, here's the thing. I look into pro wrestlers' pay rates right now, and one of their highest paid fighters is... Okay, so currently the highest paid women's pro wrestler that works full-time there would be Charlotte Flair. Charlotte Flair's income is the exact same as Amanda Nunes, $450K, and both Amanda Nunes and Charlotte Flair don't actually get to really keep the $450K because of a combination of taxes and traveling expenses. So in the WWE, you pay for your own bookings, you pay for your own flights. UFC is not going to pay for your own flights. The WWE is not going to pay for your own flights. You're not going to pay for your own medical insurance. They're not going to pay for your own housing. You have to pay all that to yourself. There's little to zero benefits when it comes to working for the WWE. And you're paying for your gas, you're paying for your food, you're paying for travel expenses, all out of your own pocket. The same thing applies for UFC fighters. Both Amanda Nunes and Charlotte Flair are paying out of their own pockets to be able to continue to optimally work for the respective company here. So I find it very interesting that Ronda Rousey is talking about, hey man, yeah, WWE, they pay a lot more than the UFC does. Note though, if you have not been following Ronda Rousey's career, Ronda Rousey has to perform in the WWE. Maybe I say she works as a part-timer, honestly. She works for a part-timer. And the way how WWE works though, we have people who are known as like great match workers, and you got wrestlers who just go out there and pull off a couple moves in a couple minutes and then they get paid that way. You don't get paid based on the amount of effort or work ethic you have in the company. You get paid based on what your position is through how much money you get, how much money you bring in. Sometimes the salaries for WWE fluctuates and doesn't really all make that much sense right now. Cause like Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair, they make very little money, but they bring a whole lot of fans into watching the show, but they make a lot less money than someone like Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows, who are slated to make $1 million. Now those two wrestlers have been they've been released recently from the WWE as of today though, but initially though, they were making a lot more money than two people, Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair, who were doing a lot more for the company, but were making far less. So Ronda Rousey goes on to say, I think it comes down with the age of the sport. Rousey told when asked about the wages paid in UFC or WWE. The older the sport is, the more athletes can really start. The older the sport is, the more the athletes can start to come together and fight for what they think they deserve as a unified front. The WWE being older, they definitely have developmental programs where they bring in people to live and train, performance center. They get a salary, they get unlimited access to doctors and physical therapists, and all these things are different. As Olympian, Okay, so what Ronda Rousey is mentioning here about the performance center people, though, that's very different. There's different contracts, and those performers who are getting all the health benefits are developmental wrestlers that, yes, they're being paid just at six figures or under six figures, but after that goes away, then, yeah, they get a huge pay rise. They're being made like $300,000 or $400,000, but after that happens, then they go and have to pay for their own expenses, so they're not making in actuality, they're not saving up all that much money, really. They really are not. So, Ronda Rousey goes on to say that UFC originally didn't have anything like that. They started, moving forward. I was like, okay, we're getting some kind of medical insurance. Okay, you're not going to move it up. You're not going to be covered with your injuries. So this comes in a time as Dana White is constantly talking about how important it is for their fighters to be healthy. I'm not sure. Maybe the UFC changed dramatically in the past 4 years when it comes to how they try to instruct their fighters when it comes to health concerns. Ronda Rousey says, WWE's even better because everyone's on salary. It's not like you show up for a fight, you get paid. You show up for a fight, you get paid. They're treated like employees. They actually are on a salary. It's much more secure. If people get injured and they can't perform months and months and months and months on end, they can actually continue to pay them and pay for their medical treatments and make sure they're taken care of. Kind of right, but kind of no. Also, then there's a huge. So a lot of pro wrestlers would consider themselves to be contractual workers, not full-time employees. So once again, they don't get the benefits. Some athletes do, but not all do, and that's an issue that's going on with pro wrestling. That some wrestlers are secured, just like the UFC. Some fighters have some security, but a lot of wrestlers and a lot of fighters just don't have that. These really don't. So, we know here Ronda Rousey much prefers WWE style of pay, considering that Ronda Rousey works as a part-timer for the WWE, and she's been off from the WWE for a couple months now, almost a year at this point, essentially, and she's still being paid. So good on her for that. Staying at home, getting paid, performing only a handful of times per year, and is a lot less dangerous. So if Ronda Rousey prefers that, good on her for that. You're listening to the GSMC Women's MMA Podcast, coming back right after the break here with something a little bit more fun.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And so you think you know mixed martial arts? Well, let's test out your overall knowledge of the history of the sports as I ask you a series of questions, and let's see if you can get them right. So question number 1 here, Ronda Rousey's a fighter in the UFC Women's Bantamweight division, shares her nickname with a very popular ex-WWE star. What is her favorite appropriate nickname? what is Ronda Rousey's nickname here? And that is Ronda Rowdy Rousey. And so the next question here is, which of the following is the first ever UFC middleweight champion? Is it Gil Costello, Carlos Newton, Pat Miletich, or Dave Menne? And once again, is it Gil Costello, Carlos Newton, Pat Miletich, or Dave Menne? The answer is Dave Menne. Dave Menne defeated Gil Costello by unanimous decision in an event that has been rated as the worst in UFC history, UFC 33. As for Carlos Newton and Pat Miletich, they were both welterweight fighters. So Dave Menne was the first ever he defeated Gil Costello. So it was Gil Costello and Dave Menne. They participated in the first ever UFC middleweight championship bouts, but in the end, it was Menne who came on top. And so coming up here is, the sport of mixed martial arts has some of the best athletes in the world. One of these famous fighters is the controversial loudmouth Tito Ortiz. What is his well-known nickname? Is it the Iceman, the world's most dangerous man? Does he not have one? Or is he the Huntington Beach bad boy? The obvious answer here is Huntington Beach bad boy. Tito is from Huntington Beach, California, and is known for being a bad boy, which suits him perfectly. Come here is, the UFC returned to an 8-man tournament format after a brief experiment with a 16-man tournament in UFC 2. The event also saw the return of defending champion Royce Gracie, but which other competitor was making their second attempt at UFC glory? Alright then, so which second fighter was making an attempt for another glory in UFC? That would have to be Ken Shamrock. So Ken Shamrock missed a UFC 2 event because of a broken hand, but he was deemed fit enough to fight at UFC 3 despite having a partial tear in his ACL. Aside from Gracie and Shamrock, all the 6 other main competitors and the alternatives had not fought in the UFC before. Coming up here is, the second UFC show welcomed back defending champion Royce Gracie to the octagon, but which other fighter from UFC 1 returned to compete in the second tournament? So, what fighter other than Royce Gracie competed in the first tournament and also the second tournament then? Mark Coleman and Dan Severn and Ken Shamrock, they came later within the lifespan of the UFC then. Who is an OG? And the answer is Patrick Smith. Patrick Smith lost to Ken Shamrock in the first round of the UFC, but his performance in the fights meant that he got an invite to the second tournament. Shamrock himself was invited to take part of UFC 2 as well, but could not compete due to a broken hand, so Patrick Smith made his return while Ken Shamrock didn't at the second UFC show. So, another question here. The UFC kickstarted its business venture with the concept of putting fighters of different techniques against each other, seeing which fighting style was the most successful. Which of these people had the idea for the concept? Now, is it Dana White, Minoru Suzuki, Helio Gracie, or Art Davie? Once again, is it Dana White, Minoru Suzuki, Helio Gracie, or Art Davie? Which of these people had the idea of the concept of mixed martial arts, practically? And so, the answer is Art Davie. Art Davie came up with the idea after seeing a series of videos documenting the Gracie family winning fights with their jiu-jitsu prowess. Davie contacted Rory and Gracie about holding a tournament where 8 fighters of different disciplines would fight each other. Gracie accepted as a way of further advertising his family fighting style of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu to a larger audience, and handpicked his younger brother Royce Gracie to take part of it. It has also been suggested that Rory and Gracie handpicked the other combatants to give Royce a strong chance of winning. I find it very interesting because there are comparisons to Dana White and Vince McMahon, and there are a lot of people that like to believe that Vince McMahon literally invented pro wrestling, to which he didn't. Dana White, mixed martial arts was already a thing, and Dana was a huge fan of MMA before the UFC even became an actual business. And so Dana White did not invent mixed martial arts. He did not do so. Minoru Suzuki is a legend in Pancrase. He is a major figure when it comes to Pancrase and Japanese style mixed martial arts. So Minoru Suzuki, although he's an important figure, did not invent it. Helio Gracie, no, it wasn't him. It was Art Davie instead. So coming down here, Mauricio Shogun Rua was arguably the best light heavyweight fighter in the world during his time in Pride FC, and won the UFC title at UFC 113 against fellow Brazilian Lyoto Machida. What was his profession before he turned his attention to professional fighting? So what was Mauricio Shogun Rua doing before he was a pro fighter? I always feel like, what were these fighters doing? I know Bruce Franklin was a math teacher before he became a full-time pro fighter. And the answer here is a model. When speaking for the UFC Undisputed 2010 video game, Shogun revealed that he was a professional model before he turned to fighting as a living. His mother was a track athlete and fellow Brazilian MMA fighter. Paulo Thiago served as a special paramilitary policeman in Sao Paulo. Which of these fighters is known as the Sandman? Is it Robbie Lawler, Houston Alexander, Marlon Sandro, or James Irvin? The answer is James Irvin. I didn't really know that. So James Irvin was the Sandman. Irvin's nickname derives from his ability to put people onto sleep, knockout style. Of his 14 wins, 10 have come from knockout, including an 8-second destruction of Houston Alexander. And coming up here is, this is a very interesting one here. Alright, this will be the last one here. Randy Couture, he was the first person to win championships in 2 different weight classes, but his first title was the UFC Heavyweight Championship, which he won all the way back at UFC Japan. Can you recall who it was he defeated? So who did Randy Couture defeat to become the UFC Heavyweight Champion at UFC Japan? Alright, it has to be somebody who is known as a gatekeeper, but is somewhat, competitive. And the answer here is Maurice Smith. Randy Couture won a massive victory over Vitor Belfort to become the number 1 contender for the UFC Heavyweight Championship at UFC 15 on October 17, 1997. He fought Maurice Smith at UFC Japan on December 21, 1997, where he won via majority decision after 21 minutes of action. And so that's what you get. So Maurice Smith, man, he really is a long-time veteran, a proper journeyman in the world of mixed martial arts here. So you know what? Let's go over one last question, actually. Let's see if you guys can get this one here. And so, out of every women's champion in UFC history, who is the 3rd longest reigning women's UFC champion in UFC history? Is it Ronda Rousey? Is it Miesha Tate? Is it Amanda Nunes? Or is it Rose Namajunas? So first off, we all know that Ronda Rousey is one of the longest reigning UFC women's champions of all time. Actually, she is the 2nd longest running UFC women's champion of all time, just behind Amanda Nunes. We also know that Miesha Tate didn't really win the belt until she defeated Holly Holm, who took out Ronda Rousey for Tate. For the longest time, the idea was that Miesha Tate could never become champion unless Ronda Rousey is gone from the picture. And so, yeah, Tate did in fact become champion, but she's only champion for 126 days. So this leaves 2 Amanda Nunes and Rose Namajunas. The answer here is Amanda Nunes is both the 1st and the 4th longest running UFC women's champion out there. Rose Namajunas is the 3rd longest reigning women's champion in UFC history, coming in at 554 days. So the interesting thing though is how is Amanda Nunes somehow both the 4th longest and the longest reigning women's UFC champion? Well, that's because Amanda Nunes' current reign as the women's bantamweight champion. Amanda Nunes is clocking in as the UFC women's bantamweight champion at 1,376 days. And since Amanda Nunes is a double belt champion, she's clocking in as the women's featherweight champion at 473 days. If Amanda Nunes continues to push forward, she might be the longest reigning champion for 2 different weight divisions, which will be a first time ever, not just in women's UFC, but also all of UFC. If things keep going as it is for Amanda Nunes for potentially the next 2 years, Nunes might be the greatest UFC champion of all time. And with the way and how things are going so far for her, I can see that potentially happening. And that will be the end of today's podcast. Thank you for listening to the GSMC Women's MMA Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'd like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps up. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you, and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Women's Mixed Martial Arts Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.